This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subject that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world tremble under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. So I have to ask, is it time?
And now, from the luxurious Albino Raccoon recording studios located in the Midwestern heart of America, it's the Last Voice for Liberty Network. And here's your host, The Mouth.
Greetings and salutations to all my fellow patriots. It is time. The Last Voice for Liberty Network, back here on the air. I am, of course, your host, The Mouth, laughing and scratching at you.
Has my fame preceded me, or was I too quick for it?
Guys, I want to talk to you today. I got a lot of information I want to get across today, and not a lot of time to do it in. So, it was posed to me earlier this week, and just to show you what kind of mood our country's been in,
I am going to rip off your head and shit down your neck.
the formation of militias to be ready and active and ready to stand against the government here and their oncoming tyranny, because that's all the signs are pointing to it, you know. Or you shake any magic 8-ball, it's going to say all signs pointing to yes.
Who the fuck said that shit?
Whether or not everybody wants to believe it or not, that's what it's all pointing to. You know, I'm sorry, I can't debate the obvious.
I am the smartest man alive!
With all the laws that they're passing, trying to disarm the people, driving down the economy, it's all pointing to a fundamental and completely horrific, tyrannical change in the lives of all Americans. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's what's coming. I think that's what a lot of people that are still resisting and trying to support what's going on and saying, nah, man, you're crazy, calling us conspiracy theorists. That's a lot of the issue there is fear. I understand that fear. I'm still afraid, which is why, you know, it keeps me searching and learning and trying to be,
You're being a stiffly Stephenson.
just a little bit cognizant of what is going on.
A, B, C, D,
Okay.
E, F, B, C, D, E, F, B.
It's all right to be afraid.
D, E, F, B, A, B,
It's the
C,
fear
D,
that
E, F, B.
of what this country it could be leading to. Why can't I get these goddamn fire-safe cigarettes to stay lit? Son of a bitch.
Well, I love when you talk dirty. Get your mad ass in this pool with me.
Anyway, folks, I'm getting off topic. I'm getting off point.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That was good.
The formation of militias to stand against the government, I think, is going to come in time. The important thing with what we're doing here, folks, is we have to stand against the government on the terms that the Constitution has laid out for us first. Okay? And we have not even begun to scratch that surface yet. All right, there is still numerous things that we, the people, are entitled to be able to do against the federal government to prevent them from doing what they're doing. We need more support from within our own federal government to help us with it.
You deserve better. You're in denial when you say no.
Now, in my opinion, I'll tell you right now, I think the entire federal government, all personnel within it need to be fired.
What?
Every single last one of them.
Yeah! Yeah!
Senators and congressmen, we will take your voting records into consideration, and as long as you have not voted for an unconstitutional law, then you will be allowed to continue to serve. If, however, Your state senator has violated the Constitution.
You're a liar.
And any laws that they've supported or any acts that they've voted, as my friend doesn't like me referring to Austin Thomas, Guerrilla Radio. It's on tonight, folks.
I was born
And tomorrow.
to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born.
If they continue to do these things,
But you were born to rub me first.
we don't stand against them using the laws that are in place, which there are.
No, I didn't hear this.
The formation of militias will become necessary then. We can't start to organize that now, and I'll tell you why. They will call you a terrorist organization. They'll sick the dogs on you and your family. And all you're simply doing is trying to protect yourself and your property.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
And your family. Or if you have no family, yourself and your property. If you have family, you know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
And to prove this point, I think the person that, this young man that brought this point to me, and he's talking about, establishing the rank and file and leadership and all this stuff in there. And I'm like, well, slow down there, young buck. This ain't the way yet. That'll come naturally. But first, in order to make our resistance just, we cannot be the ones to act first. And to order and set up an official army type ranking through it and organize that way, it's going to it can be deemed as an act of aggression by the federal government. And they would be just in thinking so.
Then you must not be too much of a friend.
That falls under the terms of, resistance and, rebellion. They can use rebellion charges against you for that.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
It's not rebellion if the federal government strikes first. Then it is liberation. It is the fight again for freedom. The federal government, now, as we all know, has been killing people secretly. But we need to get it exposed. And that's what shows like this are about. That's what a lot of shows like, Guerrilla Radio, The Truth Train with Liberty Lisa, The Truth Matrix on Saturday nights with Austin Thomas. A lot of shows like that. And there's dozens more out there, folks. There's a lot more than just my stupid ass out there yapping. There's a lot more people that are getting into it and putting these shows up because we're trying to get it through people's heads. This is real. Now, just to prove a point to my young friend, and I'm going to dedicate this show to him. I'm not going to name his name on the show. Or anything like that. But, I'm going to send him a little message myself with the link to the show. Because I want to talk to you about what happens when the government thinks you're organizing against them. I'm going to tell you a little story about a place called Ruby Ridge. A lot of the younger folks out there that listen to the show or have heard about this, you guys were all pretty young then. I was still pretty young now. I was 15, 16 years old back then. And I heard about it. I thought it was sick and disgusting, but, at that point in time, I'm a teenager. So what am I going to do about it? There's wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. I didn't know just how active I could have been in federal government because that was never taught to me in school. They never teach you about all that stuff through elementary and junior high. If you ask to be taught about it, then the teachers look at you with a blank stare like, I get kicked out of a lot of classes for that. Asking too many questions. But as I got older, and it wasn't until recently when this question was posed to me that made me start to think about Ruby Ridge and Waco. as good examples of what happens when the federal government thinks that you're plotting against them. Now, Ruby Ridge was the site of one of the deadliest confrontational sieges in American history in northern Idaho. In 1992, between Randy Weaver and his family. Now, Weaver's friend Kevin Harris and the agents of the United States Marshal Service, or the USMS, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you all know who those guys are, resulted in the death of Weaver's son, Sammy, his wife, Vicky, and Deputy U.S. Marshal William Francis Deegan. Now, at the subsequent federal criminal trial of Randy Weaver and Kevin Harris, his friend Weaver's attorney Jerry Spence made accusations of criminal wrongdoing against every agency involved in the incident. Okay? The FBI, the Marshal Service, the ATF, the United States Attorney's Office for Idaho. And at the completion of the trial, the Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility formed a Ruby Ridge task force to investigate Spence's charges. The 1994 task force was released and then redacted in a redacted form. You know, pretty much they blacked out a lot of stuff they didn't want the people to see. Freedom of Information Act. We should be able to get that. But we already know that they've been blacking things out that you want to know about anyway. No, go make a Freedom of Information Act request on the Fast and Furious. See what happens. Anyway, public outcry back then, you know, and the subsequent Waco siege that followed, involving many of these same agencies, and even some of the same personnel. Some of the same people were involved in both Ruby Ridge and Waco. Fuel a widening of this militia movement, and that's what I'm talking about. This is where this mentality is coming from. And I cannot stress how much I cannot blame this young man for getting to this point and thinking these things. He's trying to be proactive. He's trying to be defensive and be ready for it. And he wants everyone else to be too. And that is not wrong, okay? I want to stress this. That is not wrong at all. It is most responsible and most intelligent to be ready and prepared for any oncoming threats. Jiminy Christmas, that's always be prepared. That's the Boy Scout slogan.
What the fuck are you bitches babbling about?
Always be prepared. Why is that? Is that so wrong? It's not.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
But when the federal government gets wind of it, shit like this happens. Now, Randy Weaver was a former Iowa factory worker and a U.S. Army combat engineer. Okay, he moved his family to northern Iowa during the 1980s in order to homeschool his children and escape what he and his wife Vicky saw as a corrupted world, which many of us in the Liberty Movement feel that's what we're looking at right now. Okay, so all he wanted was to move his family away from the corrupted world, homeschool his kids, and that was it.
You're a man's man. You're a man's man.
Okay, live out and get our own thing, do our own thing, leave us alone. Now, Vicky, who was the religious leader of the family, believed that the apocalypse was imminent and believed that her family would survive the apocalypse in a remote mountainous area. Some people call that crazy. Some people don't. Hey, who is she hurting? Back in the day, before all technology and roads and everything else, many families were living out in the middle of nowhere, raising their children, and those children turned out just fine. They grew on to help build and cultivate this country for what it is. What they were doing is not a crime. This needs to be stressed right here as well. Okay, so what they did is they bought 20 acres of land on Ruby Ridge in 1983 and began to build themselves a cabin. The Weaver property was located in northern Idaho in Boundary County on a hillside on Ruby Creek opposite Caribou Ridge near Naples. Now, in 1984, Randy Weaver and his neighbor Terry Kinnison had a dispute over $3,000 land deals. some of the buildup that comes up to it. Now listen. Kinnison subsequently lost the lawsuit and was ordered to pay Weaver an additional $2,100 in court costs and damages. Kinnison then took it upon himself to write letters to the FBI, Secret Service, and county sheriff alleging that Weaver had threatened to kill the Pope, the President, and John V. Evans, governor of Idaho at that point in time. In January 1985, the FBI and Secret Service started an investigation. And in February, Randy and Vicki Weaver were interviewed for hours by 2 FBI agents, 2 Secret Service agents, and the Boundary County Sheriff and his chief investigator. Although Secret Service was told that Weaver was a member of the Aryan Nation at that point in time and that he had large weapons cache at his residence, Weaver denied the allegations and no charges were filed.
Hey folks, this is the Mouth. Sometimes, and just sometimes, we keep talking and keep talking and keep talking and don't realize we have to take a commercial break. This is one of those moments. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Last Voice for Liberty Network.
It's true. Yeah. You're motoring. What's your price for flight? You've got him in your sight and driving through the night.
My grandpa Harvey Weaver one time said government just like a garden, it needs to be weeded every now and then. You want to know why he said that? I didn't know for a while, but I figured it out since. This lady here was my wife of almost 20 years. She was a very intelligent lady. The best mother I knew, the best wife I knew. Homeschooled her children. And my oldest daughter, one example, I won't go through all of them. One example, my oldest daughter, she taught her through the 8th grade. When I went to jail and they sent my daughters back to Iowa, they put Sarah in the 11th grade in high school. She had been to school for a couple of years, so we thought she was done. Went into 11th grade and graduated with 3 scholarships. The other kids are just as good. I'm not going to go through all that. Very sweet lady, and when they shot her, she was holding, now this baby here was that was my oldest daughter. That's a picture of my wife holding my oldest daughter, Sarah, who is now 31. But she was holding my youngest daughter, Elizabeth, just about the same way. When they shot my wife through the head, Elizabeth was right here, and when I picked her up from underneath my wife's body, she had jawbone, glass from the window pane, and blood all over. I thought she was wounded or dying too. That's one reason we need to weed the government now and then, because they take orders to enforce non-laws. These people are here under non-laws, and we were too. I was originally on a gun law, but the U.S. Marshals were up there to get me on a failure to appear. I got paperwork I can show you. I had the wrong court date. By the time they claimed I was a wild crazy man up in the mountains, and the U.S. Marshals going to come get their man, that's the last straw. I got mad. And my wife is mad and my kids are standing behind me. And we said, this is it, we ain't going to deal with you no more. What makes people willing to put their lives on the line? They'll take so much BS from the so-called government, the de facto government, and then they just say back off. And this is just what's happening right here. I ain't afraid to die no more. I'm kind of curious about the next life, and I'm an atheist. My son Sam, this picture, he was 11 years old. He died 3 years later. U.S. Marshals shot his dog, a yellow Labrador, when the dog was running home. They autopsied the dog, which some U.S. Marshals didn't realize they would do. They wouldn't mess with the dog there. His story was the dog was attacking him. Well, apparently in North Idaho, yellow Labradors, they attacked running backwards because he was shot right up the rear end to come out his spine here and went through his right ear. He was running up the road toward home. He'd already passed these goons. But their job that day on our property was to kill this dog because he had a big mouth, kind of like me, I guess. And they wanted to silence him. Sam said you shot Stryker, you SOB. I'll give you the exact words. Well, I'm going to abbreviate it. And he fired 2 rounds in this undercover camouflage U.S. Marshal's direction that he just saw shoot his dog, and he turned to run for home. Another Marshal who's from Boston, Mass., not too far from here, he shot this little fella in the right arm, about blew his arm off the elbow. Sam yelled, "Oh shit." Now I'm telling you what my friend Kevin Harris and his stepbrother, he was there to witness this. He said, "Sam yelled, 'Oh shit.'" Come on, Kevin. The U.S. Marshals that were shooting at Kevin at the same time. Sam had shot these 2 rounds at U.S. Marshals. Kevin fired 3 in their direction while he was being shot at. So there's 5 rounds fired between my sons. They fired a total of 14 rounds. They didn't hit Kevin, but Kevin heard it when they hit Sam in the back. It was like, he said, it sounded like when somebody punched in the back real hard, takes the wind out of you. Well, later on, it had blown his heart right out. When I picked him up off the ground dead, chunks of meat was falling out of his mouth. His little eyeballs was halfway open and rolled back, and the whites, you don't forget that stuff. After they shot Sam, a U.S. Marshal was shot and killed, and I honestly believe in my heart, they have never proved otherwise, it was friendly fire. They can't admit that, they won't admit that. That's even, think how much worse that is than blaming it on one of us. They blamed his death on my stepson. Said my stepson did it. Well, he come out in court, he didn't do it. They even showed one of his men's, they showed his backpack, and it had one bullet hole going through it sideways, and proved that came from that silent submachine gun from the guy behind him who was supposed to have killed the dog with that to start with when we weren't present.
What's those horrid sounds I hear? Up on Ruby Ridge. Back in August '92, up there in the hills, in the beauty of North Idaho, where there's only bears and still, there came 6 U.S. Marshals, hiding behind logs, and they caught poor Randy Weaver. First they killed his dog. Randy and his family, just another day, outside in the morning air, nothing in their way. Came 6 U.S. Marshals with a job that must get done, and they caught poor Randy Weaver. Next they killed his son. The dogs barked at the Marshals, hiding in the woods, trespassing on private land under orders that they should. You just don't shoot a man's dog, sure don't shoot his son, but these here U.S. Marshals did. Got Weaver on the run. What's that in the forest, moving through the trees, hiding in the shadows, there's danger in the breeze. Something's very wrong, I fear, not sure what it is. What's those horrid sounds I hear? Up on Ruby Ridge. Holed up in their cabin, tiny frightened band, while federal reinforcements came flying o'er the land. Soon there were 400 feds all around their hill, 'cause the Weavers were so dangerous. The orders were to kill. out to see the body of his boy shot in the back. A hidden federal sniper shot Randy near the shack. He struggled to the cabin, bleeding from his side, and if he'd known what was coming, he might have stayed outside. Vicki Weaver stood there, baby in her arms, never knew that living free could lead to all this harm. Standing there behind her door, filled with fear and dread, this same cowardly sniper shot her through the head. I spent 4 years in the service, keep my country free, fighting for the right to live your life as you see be. And I dearly love my country, proud of what I did, but I think I watched some freedoms die. Up on Ruby Ridge. And what's that in the forest, moving through the trees, hiding in the shadows, there's danger in the breeze. Something's very wrong, I fear, not sure what it is. What's those horrid sounds I hear? Up on Ruby Ridge.
The investigation, folks, noted that Weaver associated with a man named Frank Kumnick, who is known to associate with members of the Aryan Nation. Now, Weaver told the investigators that neither he nor Kumnick were members of the Aryan Nation and described Kumnick as associated with the Covenant, Sword, and Arm of the Lord faction. Okay? On February 28, 1985, Randy and Vicki Weaver filed an affidavit with the county courthouse alleging that their personal enemies were plotting to provoke the FBI into attacking and killing the Weaver family. On May 6, 1985, Randy and Vicki sent a letter to then-President Ronald Reagan, claiming that Weaver's enemies may have sent the president a threatening letter under a forged signature. No evidence of a threatening letter surfaced. Now, however, the 1985 letter was cited by the prosecutor in 1992 as overt Act 7 of the Weaver family conspiracy against the federal government. They started to build a case of their conspiracy against the federal government. Why? Okay? This is where we're going to get to it, folks.
Sweet mother of God, what is the holdup?
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, all our good friends at the ATF, and you can guess just about how these guys run. They first became aware of Weaver in July of 1986 when he was introduced to an ATF informant at a meeting of the Aryan Nation. Now, any of you that were alive back then, you remember that's all that was talked about when these guys were brought up on the media, was that they're Aryan Nation. They're white supremacists. Now, Weaver had been invited by Frank Kumnick, who was the original target of the ATF investigation. This was Weaver's first attendance, and over the next 3 years, Weaver and the informant had met several more times. It doesn't say whether it was at meetings or not, so you still cannot draw that conclusion. All right. In October 1989, the ATF claimed that Weaver sold the informant 2 shot-off shotguns, with the overall length of the guns shorter than the legal limit set by federal law. Here's my problem with that. Why does federal law? How did federal law get involved in how long a shotgun can be? I just...
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm getting off topic. All right. Now, by this time, Weaver had a falling out with both Kumnik and the Aryan Nation. Okay? This is just a couple years later. Now, in November of 1989, Weaver accused the ATF informant of being a spy for police. Now, Weaver later wrote that he had been warned by Rico V., the informant's handler. Excuse me, not the informant. A man named Rico V., okay? The informant's handler, Herb Byerly, ordered the ATF informant to have no further contact with Weaver. Now, eventually, FBI informant Rico Valentino outed the ATF informant to the Aryan Nation security anyway. Now, ATF agent Byerly had come to regard Kumnik as just a boastful show-off, and Weaver is even less involved. So, he really had pretty much nothing to do with the Aryan Nation. Okay, other than maybe trying to make some money, or these are his buddies, or whatever. You never know, these are, guys that he became friends with and they just hung around. You don't know what the hell they were doing because nobody was there. The ATF agent who got pretty much outed by the FBI, that's pretty funny. The FBI informant narked off the ATF informant to the Aryan Nation and to Randy Weaver. Say, hey, this guy's ATF. Funny, isn't it?
I mean, where's that? Which one's the fat pig?
These guys betray each other. It sounds like they're betraying each other here. And then, the ATF, once again, like I said, come to regard this Frank Kumnik character as just a boastful show-off. So pretty much he's just hanging with the Aryan Nation to say he hangs with the Aryan Nation. I don't know. That's what the ATF is saying. But call Randy Weaver even less than that. Okay? In June of 1990, Byerly attempted to use the sawed-off shotgun charge as leverage to get Weaver to act as an informant for his investigation against the Aryan Nation. Weaver refused to become a snitch, and the ATF filed the gun charges in June of 1990, also claiming that Weaver was a bank robber with criminal convictions. Those claims were false, folks. At that time, Weaver had no criminal record, and the subsequent Senate investigation found that Weaver was not a suspect in any bank robberies. So they filed these gun charges, and then made up a couple more just to keep him there. Made him up. How much integrity does that take, folks? Weaver denied the sawed-off weapons charge anyway, claiming that the informant had purchased 2 legal shotguns from him and then later shortened the guns. A federal grand jury later indicted him in December of 1990 for making and possessing, but not for selling, illegal weapons in October of 89. ATF agents posed as broken-down motorists and arrested Randy and Vicky Weaver when they stopped to assist. How does that make sense? Weaver was told of the charges against him. If he had charges against him and a reason for you to come arrest, why do you have to pose as a broken-down motorist, and when they stop to help you, then you arrest them? Really?
That's fucked up.
That doesn't make any sense at all. Forgive me for saying so, but it doesn't.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Now, he was told of the charges against him, released on bail, and then told that his trial would begin, this is important, on February 19th, 1991. On January 22nd of that year, the judge in the case notified attorney Everett Hoffmeister that he would be serving as Weaver's attorney. Hoffmeister made several unsuccessful attempts to contact Weaver. Now, on that same day, Weaver called the U.S. probation officer Carl Richens and informed him that Weaver was instructed to contact him on that date. Richens said he did not have the case file at that time, so he asked Weaver to leave his contact information, and Richens would contact him when he received the paperwork. Now, according to Mr. Richins, Weaver did not give him a telephone number. Defense counsel Hoffmeister then sent letters to Weaver on January 19th, January 31st, and February 5th, asking Weaver to contact him to work on his defense within the federal court system. Okay, now, as of February 5th that year, the trial date was changed from February 19th to February 20th to give participants more time, travel time following a federal holiday, President's Day. Now, the court clerk sent a letter to the parties informing them of the date change. However, the notice was not sent directly to Weaver, only to his attorney. Now, on February 7th, U.S. Probation Officer Richins sent Weaver a letter indicating that he now had the case file and he needed to talk with Weaver. This letter erroneously indicated that Weaver's trial date was set for March 20th, not February 20th. So Weaver thinks that his trial date is set for March 20th, when in all reality it's on February 20th. Now, on February 8th, Hoffmeister again attempted to contact Weaver by letter, informing him that the trial was to begin February 20th, and Weaver needed to contact him immediately. Hoffmeister also made several calls to individuals who knew Weaver, asking them to have Weaver call him. Hoffmeister told the judge that he did not hear from Weaver before the scheduled court date. So he's got one lawyer telling him March 20th. He's got another one telling him February 20th. What would you do? You already had a distrust of the government enough so that you went out and bought 20 acres of land and moved your family out there and to raise them off the grid and take care of yourselves, to get away from the corrupt world. And then they send you, for a court date, they send you 2 different dates for the same trial. That doesn't make any sense. I would be pissed too. I would pretty much, I think at that point in time, I would pretty much tell them to go fuck themselves myself.
Watch your language, you bud. We're on the air.
Oh, man!
All truth be told. Now, when Weaver did not appear in court on February 20th, the judge issued a bench warrant for failure to appear. On February 26th, Ken Keller, a reporter for the Kootenai Valley Times, telephoned the U.S. Probation Office and asked if the reason that Weaver did not show in court on February 20th was because the letter sent to him by Richins had an incorrect date. Now, upon finding a copy of the letter, the Chief Probation Officer, Terrence Hubble, did what he was supposed to and contacted the judge's clerk and informed them of the incorrect date in the letter. Hubble also contacted the U.S. Marshal Service and Weaver's attorney, informing them of the error, because apparently they did not know. Now, the judge, however, refused to withdraw the bench warrant. The U.S. Marshal Service did agree to put off executing the warrant until after March 20th to see if Weaver would show up in court that day. Now, if he were to show up on March 20th, then the Department of Justice claimed that all indications that are the warrant would have been dropped. Now, instead of waiting to see if Weaver would show up on March 20th, however, the U.S. Attorney's Office called a grand jury on March 14th. And the USAO, the U.S. Attorney's Office, failed to provide Richins' erroneous letter, which proved that Weaver had been misinformed about his summons to federal court as evidence to the grand jury. And the grand jury issued an indictment against Weaver for failure to appear, because they did not have all of the evidence.
You weren't even born with the sense God gave the common dog.
When the Weaver case was passed from the ATF over to the Marshal Service, no one informed the Marshals of the fact that the ATF had attempted to solicit Weaver as an informant. Now, once again, they're hiding things from each other. Why would they do that? Probably because they weren't supposed to. I'm sure there was a law against it at that point in time. Now, Weaver was known to have an intense distrust of government, as I said before, and it's believed that the erroneous letter from Richins intensified his distrust and may have contributed to his reluctance to appear. You know, once again, he didn't run. He didn't run at all. See, as law enforcement arm of the federal court, it's the duty of the U.S. Marshal Service to bring in the fugitive Randy Weaver. But unlike most federal fugitives who flee across state lines to avoid arrest, he just simply stayed home. And he told him, "Oh, you try to come take me from my house for this bullshit charge, and I will resist any attempts to be made to be taken by force. He will defend his home, his family, and his property," which he's guaranteed by the Constitution to not be denied anyway. So, as he's distrustful of his government, he's refusing to leave his cabin. And the Marshal Service officers made a series of attempts to have him surrender peacefully. He negotiated with U.S. Marshals Ron Evans, W. Warren Mays, and David Hunt through third parties from March 5th to October 12, 1991. Now, when Prosecutor Ron Evans directed that the negotiations cease at that time, the U.S. attorney, so they negotiated with him through other people for what? 7 months almost? Marshals then began preparing plans to capture Weaver to stand trial on the weapons charges and his failure to appear at the correct trial date. So just to understand this, folks, this is over 2 shotguns and not coming to court for it. Been in contact with the marshals all this time through third parties. So they're playing a game of telephone. Remember I used to play it at the lunch tables in school? Where you sit there and whisper something in somebody's ear, pass it all the way down. By the time it gets down there, it's totally different from what you said.
What the hell was that?
Anyway, now, although the marshals had stopped their negotiations as they were ordered to, they still made other contact. March 4th of 1992, U.S. Marshals Ron Evans and Jack Clough actually drove to the Weaver property and spoke with Weaver, posing his real estate prospects. At a March 27, 1992 Marshal Service headquarters meeting, Art Roderick codenamed the operation Northern Exposure. Surveillance teams were dispatched and cameras were set up to record activity at Weaver's residence. Marshals observed that Weaver and his family responded to vehicles and other visitors by taking up armed position around the cabin until the visitors were recognized. They were already scared. Very much so. And ready to defend themselves. And why shouldn't they have been? They needed to be. They're smart. They had thought about it.
We'll be back tomorrow, folks.
More on Ruby Ridge on the Last Voice for Liberty Network.
I wish I could just make you turn around and see me cry. There's so much I need to say to you, so many reasons why. You're the only one who really knew me at all. So take a look at me now. There's just an empty space, and there's nothing left here to remind me. Just the memory of your face. Take a look at me now.
governed by the British King and Parliament. They devised ingenious means to tax us. One of the most hateful was the Stamp Act. It required that every person in the colonies buy a stamp that bore the image of the king and affix that stamp to every piece of paper in his possession. Question: how did the king know if every colonist was complying with the Stamp Act? Answer: the Townshend Act. This abominable law authorized British soldiers to write their own search warrants. Thus, British soldiers knocked on the doors of the colonists' homes and handed them warrants in which they had authorized themselves to enter, ostensibly to look for the stamps. They entered wherever they wanted, and they took whatever they wished. The colonists were so outraged at these self-written search warrants that Parliament actually rescinded the laws that permitted them. But the offenses to personal dignity and the assaults on private property were too deep. We fought a bloody revolution against the government that did this to us. After we won that revolution, we wrote a constitution to assure that these abuses would not happen again. And to that constitution, we added a Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights guaranteed that the government could not on its own assault your natural rights. Among them, that quintessentially American right, the right to be left alone. Today we call this right the right to privacy. The Fourth Amendment requires that the government, before the government can assault your right to privacy and search your possessions, come onto your property, listen to your phone calls, read your mail, monitor your keystrokes on your computer, or even obtain records about you from other sources like doctors, banks, or lawyers. It must present evidence of criminal behavior on your part, under oath to a judge. And only if the judge accepts that evidence, and only if the judge issues a search warrant, may the government legally seek and seize whatever is specifically described in the warrant. No more government knocking on doors in the middle of the night and taking whatever it wished. Regrettably, the federal government has labored mightily to get around all this. Even though every person who works for the government has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, many of them seem to spend more time avoiding and evading it. In the days after 9/11, Congress enacted the Patriot Act, an abominable piece of legislation which permits federal agents to write their own search warrants. With the Patriot Act, we have come full circle from the days in which a king unleashed soldiers upon us on their own to the present day in which our elected representatives have unleashed federal agents upon us on their own, all in utter disregard for our natural right to be left alone and the constitutional requirements of a judicially issued search warrant. The Patriot Act, perpetrated by a Republican president and Congress, was and is one of the gravest legislative assaults on human freedom. It was harshly criticized at the time by a young Democratic senator from Illinois named Barack Obama. But freedom must look very different from inside the White House than from outside. This morning we learned from the front page of the Wall Street Journal that the Obama Justice Department, without obtaining search warrants, has been using a computer program called Stingray, which manipulates your cell phone to enable the government to follow you whenever the phone is with you. And last month, the Obama Justice Department told the Supreme Court that it has been installing GPS systems on the cars of those without cell phones so it can follow them. And last spring, the Obama Justice Department persuaded the court to let cops break down doors without a search warrant on the basis of what they think they smell from coming behind the doors. And somehow it claims that the Fourth Amendment is no obstacle to all this. What's going on here? Is this really America in 2011, or is it East Germany in 1961? Would the government prefer to watch all of us, to seize our computer records, to listen to our conversations, to break down our doors whenever it wished without following the Constitution? Yes, it would. Power by nature expands. That's why we have a Constitution, to restrain governmental power. Who would want to live in a society where the government was unrestrained? Have we fought wars against totalitarian governments only to find that we have elected one here at home? Did you even know that the federal government may be using your cell phone to follow you wherever you go? Have we become a nation of sheep? Sadly, the answers to these questions are obvious.